Emma and Mark had been together for over a decade. From the outside, their marriage seemed unbreakable. They had built a beautiful life together, a comfortable home, stable careers, and a circle of supportive friends. But behind closed doors, their marriage had its flaws, ones that Emma found impossible to overlook. Mark was a dependable man, always reliable but often distant. His long hours as an engineer left Emma feeling down, despite the material comforts their life provided. As the years passed, her dissatisfaction grew into resentment. She longed for excitement and the spark they had once shared. It was during one of her nights out with friends that she met Tyler. Tyler was everything Mark wasn't: spontaneous, charming, and attentive. He listened to Emma in a way she hadn't experienced in years. What began as casual conversations turned into secret meetings and eventually a full-blown affair. Emma justified her actions, believing she deserved happiness, even if it meant seeking it outside her marriage. However, Mark was no fool. He noticed a late-night text Emma tried to hide and her increasing detachment. He hired a private investigator who quickly uncovered Emma's infidelity. Armed with undeniable evidence, Mark confronted Emma. She initially denied everything but eventually broke down and admitted to the affair. The confrontation shattered their already fragile marriage. Mark filed for divorce, determined to start fresh. What Emma hadn't expected, though, were the financial consequences of her actions. During their marriage, she had built a successful career as a business consultant, earning significantly more than Mark. When the divorce proceedings began, Mark's lawyer presented the evidence of Emma's infidelity, which strongly influenced the judge's decision. In their state, infidelity could affect alimony rulings. Given Emma's higher income, the judge ruled that she was required to pay Mark alimony. Emma was stunned. Not only had she lost her marriage, but now she faced the humiliation of financially supporting the man she had betrayed. Mark, though hurt, saw the ruling as a small step toward justice. He used the alimony to rebuild his life, investing in therapy and hobbies he had long neglected. Emma's affair cost her more than she ever imagined. It was a harsh lesson in the consequences of betrayal, one she would carry with her for years. Meanwhile, Mark found comfort in knowing that sometimes, even in heartbreak, there can be a sense of poetic justice. In the months following the divorce, Emma tried to rebuild her life. She moved into a smaller apartment. Her once luxurious lifestyle, now limited by the alimony payments and the social fallout of her actions. Friends who had once admired her success grew distant. Some openly disapproved of her betrayal, while others quietly sided with Mark. Emma couldn't escape the guilt that gnawed at her. Every alimony payment reminded her of what she had lost, not just financially, but emotionally. Her affair with Tyler, the man who had seemed so exciting, faded out almost immediately after the divorce. Their relationship couldn't survive the weight of real-world consequences, and Tyler, realizing Emma's complicated situation, quickly distanced himself. Mark, on the other hand, began to thrive. With the financial cushion provided by the alimony, he took time off work to travel, explore new hobbies, and focus on himself. He enrolled in a photography class, something he had always wanted to do but never had time for. Through these new experiences, he met a supportive and vibrant community that helped him heal. One day, while attending a gallery event for amateur photographers, Mark met Olivia, a writer with a warm smile and a curious mind. Unlike Emma, Olivia had a quiet authenticity that drew Mark in. Their connection was slow and genuine, built on mutual respect and shared interests. Emma heard about Mark's new relationship through mutual friends. Though she wished him well, it stung to see him moving on so gracefully while she struggled to find her footing. She began therapy, hoping to understand the choices that had led her to this point. It was in these sessions that Emma faced painful truths about herself, her fears, insecurities, and the resentment she had carried for years. Emma started to rebuild. Though the journey was far from easy, she found comfort in volunteering, using her professional skills to help small businesses in underserved communities. It didn't erase the pain of her mistakes, but it gave her a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. As for Mark, his life continued to improve. He and Olivia grew closer, building a relationship based on trust and open communication. Though he occasionally thought about the hurt Emma had caused, he was grateful for the lessons it brought. In the end, both Mark and Emma emerged from the wreckage of their marriage forever changed. For Mark, it was a story of resilience and renewal. For Emma, it was a harsh but necessary reckoning with herself. While their paths had diverged, they each learned that even the deepest betrayals could lead to new beginnings, as long as they were willing to face their truths head-on. Years passed, and Emma and Mark's lives became completely different. Mark married Olivia, building a happy, stable life. His photography blossomed into a side career, and his newfound confidence showed in every aspect of his life. Emma, though still single, found peace in her volunteer work and therapy. The alimony payments eventually ended, but the lessons from her mistakes stayed with her. She learned to face her regrets and rebuild herself, piece by piece. Their paths rarely crossed, but when they did, there was no bitterness, just a quiet acknowledgement of the pain they had endured and the growth it had inspired. Both had found their own forms of closure, proving that even broken relationships could lead to personal transformation. Mark and Olivia built a joyful life together, leaving the pain of the past behind. Emma, humbled by her mistakes, found purpose in her volunteer work and grew into a more self-aware person. When their paths crossed years later, there was no hostility, only a quiet understanding of how the choices they made had shaped them both into stronger individuals. Life had moved on, and so had they. As time went on, Mark thrived in his new life with Olivia, while Emma found peace and purpose on her own. Their rare encounters were cordial, marked by mutual acceptance. Both had moved forward, shaped by the lessons of their shared past, but no longer defined by it. Years later, Mark and Emma crossed paths at a community event. The awkwardness they once felt had faded, replaced by a calm acknowledgement of their shared history. Mark introduced Olivia, his wife, who greeted Emma warmly. Emma, in turn, shared how her volunteer work had become a passion and how she had grown through the challenges of the past. Their conversation was brief but respectful, a quiet reminder of how far they had come. Though their lives had taken very different directions, both had found peace, proving that even from heartbreak, new beginnings could flourish. At the community event, the air was filled with a sense of celebration and connection. It was a fundraiser for local small businesses, something that had become Emma's focus in the years since the divorce. She had thrown herself into helping others, finding redemption in the work she did. Though her journey had been painful, it had also been transformative. Mark spotted Emma across the room as he arrived with Olivia. For a moment he hesitated, unsure if approaching her would stir up old wounds. But Olivia, ever kind and perceptive, gently nudged him. "There's no harm in saying hello," she said with a smile. When Mark approached, Emma noticed immediately and braced herself. She hadn't seen him in years, and though she had moved on in her own way, the sight of him still brought back a mix of emotions, regret, guilt, and a bittersweet nostalgia. "Mark," she greeted him, his tone friendly but reserved. "It's been a long time." They exchanged pleasantries, and Mark introduced Olivia, whose warmth immediately put Emma at ease. Olivia spoke of their shared interests, asking Emma about her work, and expressing genuine admiration for her efforts to support the community. Emma, in turn, congratulated them on their life together. She could see the happiness in Mark's eyes, a lightness that hadn't been there during the final years of their marriage. It stung a little, but she reminded herself that he deserved this joy. As they talked, Emma realized how much had changed. Mark was no longer the quiet, overworked man she had once resented. He seemed at peace, confident, and open, and she, too, had grown, learning to face her flaws and find fulfillment on her own terms. Their conversation was brief, but it left an impact on both of them. As Mark and Olivia walked away to mingle with others, Emma stood in quiet reflection. She felt no bitterness, only a strange sense of closure. Mark, too, felt a weight lift, though he had long since moved on. Seeing Emma again reminded him of how far he had come, not just in rebuilding his life, but in finding a love that truly suited him. That night, as the event wound down, Emma stayed behind to help clean up. She watched as Mark and Olivia left hand in hand, their laughter gently carried by the breeze. Instead of sadness, Emma felt a sense of gratitude. Their paths had diverged, but in doing so, they had both found what they needed. Emma returned to her apartment later that evening, tired but content. She poured herself a cup of tea and sat by the window, reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Life had tested her in ways she never anticipated, but it had also shown her strength she didn't know she possessed. Mark and Olivia, meanwhile, returned home to their cozy, laughter-filled life, both grateful for the love they had found in each other. Though their lives had taken different directions, Mark and Emma's brief reunion was a quiet reminder of how much they had both grown. Both had found their own paths to happiness, and in the end, that was all that mattered. Over the weeks following the event, Emma found herself thinking about her encounter with Mark and Olivia. She had expected it to stir up unresolved feelings, but instead, it brought her peace. She realized that closure doesn't always come with grand gestures or dramatic moments. It often arrives quietly in unexpected ways. Mark, too, reflected on the evening. He was struck by how Emma seemed different, her demeanor softer and her energy focused outward. It was clear she had worked hard to rebuild her life and had found a sense of purpose. He felt no anger toward her anymore, just a quiet acceptance of the journey they had both endured. For Emma, life continued to unfold in small but meaningful ways. Her volunteer work led her to collaborate with a local nonprofit, where she became a mentor for women starting over after personal setbacks. Her experiences gave her a unique perspective, and she used them to help others navigate their challenges. Over time, Emma's efforts gained recognition, and she became a key figure in her community's revitalization projects. Mark and Olivia's relationship deepened as they built a life full of love, trust, and shared passions. They traveled, hosted gatherings with friends, and supported each other's creative endeavors. Olivia encouraged Mark to showcase his photography, and his work began to gain attention in local galleries. Years later, Mark and Emma crossed paths once more, this time at an award ceremony where Emma was being honored for her contributions to the community. Mark had been invited as a guest photographer for the event. When their eyes met across the room, they shared a warm smile, a silent acknowledgement of how far they had both come. After the ceremony, Mark approached Emma to congratulate her. "You've done incredible work," he said sincerely. "Thank you, Mark," Emma replied. "It means a lot coming from you." They talked briefly, catching up on their lives. There was no awkwardness, only mutual respect and an unspoken understanding that their shared past had shaped them into who they were. As Mark left that evening with Olivia by his side, he felt a profound sense of gratitude for his new life, for the lessons learned, and even for the hardships that had brought him here. Emma, too, felt quiet pride, knowing she had taken her pain and turned it into something meaningful. Their lives, once intertwined, had long since separated. Yet, in their own ways, they had both found happiness, proving that even from the deepest heartbreak, something beautiful can emerge.